All right. So good morning to all. If you're in Europe, good afternoon. Welcome to this webinar on February 11th that will look at what's new in version 5.2. We'll also be looking at a few key elements from version 5.1, as well as some things to remember in Margill, stuff I see often when I give some training where people don't use these very useful features. My name is Margill. I'm the CEO of Margill. So welcome to all. Let's get going. So game plan, help, documentation, and tools. Don't forget, from version 5.1, you should all be at least on version 5.1. Otherwise, you're behind schedule. I hope you're not on version 4.x because that's getting older. And it's quite important to follow the updates. If you don't update for many versions, you'll see you may run into trouble with the updates. This is just a reminder. If there are features which interest you, take note of them, and then you can dig deeper into it. If you use simple interest capitalized, you can now capitalize at any date. In the older versions, you would have to calculate on the anniversary date. So if your loan starts January 1, you could only capitalize on January 1st every year if it was on an annual basis, or every first of the month. Now you could say, I want to my loan starts January 1st, but I want to capitalize February 1st of every year or every month at a different date. You can do that now. You can hide obsolete line statuses. So you're a long-time user of the software and you say, well, I don't use this line status anymore. I don't want my users to use it anymore. It will not be visible in new loans. It'll be only visible in loans which actually used this line status. Very, very useful. Again, one of our goals in version 5.2, in 5.1 also, was to get rid of these irritants. In terms of workflow, some users cannot change their record status. So if I'm a draft, I cannot make it active. So for example, you could have one dedicated user who makes a record active. Otherwise, they're always drafts or something else. This is a kind of a small feature, but the grace date can now be after the loan end date. My loan ends in 2023. I could have a grace date after that if it was paid afterwards, if you know what grace date is all about. You can change the interest rate for multiple loans at once for a time period only. With COVID these days, many lenders, especially public lenders, will say, listen, we'll do no interest for 3, 6, 12 months or whatever. So you can go globally, change the interest rates only for a period of time, as opposed to doing it for the duration of the loan. Again, this is with a shortcut that's called Control-Alt-Shift-I. All the shortcuts are available with the F2 in Windows. F2, it gives you all the shortcuts. Small thing, the word term has been hidden for those who don't want to see it. If you're not doing mortgages, then the term is not really relevant. We use the word term versus amortization. Let's say we have a 20-year mortgage. It's amortized over 20 years. With a term of only 5 years, I could have a 60 payment loan, but which was with a balance at after 5 years, which is fully amortized over 20 years. So what we'd like to do is minimize what users need to enter if they don't need it. Quite important for that. You can change the refund order in the column fees and in the principal and the APR fees. For example, you could say, I want to pay fees 2 before paying fees 1 in this exceptional circumstance. So right click of the mouse and you can change your refund order. You can now have column fees based on number of days late. I have a rule that says if you're more than 10 days late, then I charge $25, £25, or whatever. But if it's only 9 days late, then the fees wouldn't kick in automatically with a paid late payment status. So if you go over 10 days or 10 days or more, then the fees would kick in. There's now a way with the Control-Alt-Shift-F12 to change the line statuses in the payment schedule for due and paid line statuses in bulk. So it's quite quick if you want to change very easily. Again, with F2, you can see all the shortcuts. I know this is getting long, I'm sorry, but it'll be becoming a little more interesting afterwards. We have new reporting field, one which was a very interesting one, is the amount due at current date. So in other words, the person is late, or not they're late, they haven't paid a few payments. So what is the amount they have to pay today to come back on track, to go back to a balance of zero? So this amount, you can produce this in the reports or put it in the your statements. So you are outstanding for whatever, $1,000, and you would have to pay today $965 to get back on track. It's an interesting element for your borrowers to know. Participation loans, you can know the total amount of participants or the percentage. We now have a tally of the line statuses. For example, I want to know how many unpaid payments I have in 2020. You'd be able to pick that up very easily. Or how many paids or paid cash. So there's a tally of the number of line statuses. This is a little more advanced. I option to specify the default due payment when creating a payment schedule. I won't go over that. It's a little more advanced. Column fees are now allowed on paid principal line statuses. Big deal. Mass change in payment schedule of payment amount, column fees, custom columns for next due payments. If you're doing escrow accounts, or if you are charging sales taxes and the escrow amount changes in 2021, you can now bulk make these changes for future payments, whereas before it was kind of difficult. So that simplifies the lives of many people who use column fees or other types of those extra columns, those extra identification columns in the payment schedule. Mass data import via Excel. Three monetary columns. You can now import those. You can import other line statuses and even include a compulsory payment of zero. So I can say, for example, I want to include new column fees, and I want it to be a payment of zero because I want to put my amounts in the column fees, not in the payment column. We'll look at this afterwards. If you do mass emails, there's a testing tool for that. And there's a really cool optional module for participation loans where investors can come in and out of the loan over time. It's quite a complex module, quite interesting also, if you do those kinds of complex loans. They're usually higher amount loans. Are we almost done with 5.1? I hope so. Okay, what's new in 5.2? You're quite lucky. I won't cover these one by one. I will actually, but by slides. So this is just to show what's happening. Quite a few changes. These are all individual slides, don't worry. Don't forget to consult under support, and then it's the download center, consult the release notes. You can see in more detail, and a lot more detail than what we're covering today. So let's begin. In the main window, we now have it's a nice, sexy a dashboard. You'll notice it's on the bottom right. Sorry, it's on the bottom of the main window where you have dashboard and totals. If you don't see it in 5.2, it means your administrator might have hidden the totals. So that, because some people don't want to show the totals to their employees, just not to have too much sensitive data on the main window. But you can go in and activate the totals and dashboard. You can create your own widgets. It's kind of cool. One thing I like is to see trends. You could see for the floating year how many new records I have, or how much, what amounts have been given in various months. Is my trend going upwards, downwards? What is it compared to last year? Where you can change the dates here. I could say in 2019, 2020, etc. Okay, it's kind of a cool thing. It's marketing really. So it's not. I don't call it a number stuff. This is going to be very interesting for those of you who produce reports every day, or that have huge reports, or reports that take half an hour to create when you have thousands and thousands of loans. You can now, with what we call the overnight tasks, create the record list customized and the transaction report. So you could say every day at midnight or at 1 o'clock in the morning, produce this report, give it a name, or change the name with an increment of 1, for example. You can create a CSV, a text, or an Excel file, and it would be saved in this folder, and then could be automatically imported by your accounting package or any kind of other database. You can also run a query with that, only include active records or only include these records, which are with a special creditor or whatever. So this is critical in the new version, and it's available right now. Okay. You could also run these every month if you want, every day, every week. It's up to you. It's with what we call the overnight tasks and with the Windows Task Scheduler. Okay. Of course, you create your own report as you see fit in the record list or transactions. The Salesforce CRM integration, it's currently in beta mode. You are now able to export data from Margill, so just about any kind of data. It could be the balances, the outstanding amounts, what's coming up, the next due payment, the amounts, etc., dates, or anything you want, to Salesforce. And you can also import data from Salesforce to Margill via the API, but you can only import borrower data. So for example, you want the person's address changes, you make the change in Salesforce, and it would be brought into Margill. You could say, I want to bring this in. Right now, you have to bring it in manually, but in the upcoming version, it's going to be with a Windows service, which you'll say, I want to run this every 5 minutes. So it would pick up either new borrowers or borrower updates. And this is with Salesforce. And you'll see we'll cover a bit later on another type of import, an automatic import via a Windows service. Column fees can now be based on the pure principal balance as well as the number of days. So this is really a simple interest calculation. So it's another way of adding fees as opposed to having a set amount of fees based on the previous line's total balance. You can now say it's based only on principal, and it's going to calculate the fees, let's say 30 days, and it'll thus calculate the amount due on that particular line. It's exactly like doing simple interest, where it takes balance multiplied by number of days divided by 365 multiplied by 2%, for example. So it's another way of calculating fees. You can now attach a results table in and send it to your to your borrowers in bulk. So you select your loans in the main window, you create yourself a nice little email template, and you say attach results table, and they'll all go out in, that's the payment schedule. They'll all go out to your various borrowers. You'll see the format is not exactly the same table as you would create on your own. It's a little less sophisticated, but the other one had too many criteria in there, and we couldn't really have an automatic sending of that specific report. For security reasons, we are now time-stamping the notes. So when you add notes right here on the left for on the loan itself, or for the borrower, you can have notes. They are now time-stamped with who wrote the note, what time, what date, and you cannot delete you cannot delete these notes, but they can be hidden. After 24 hours, they cannot be changed, even by the admin. So it's a question of, well, security and audit for audit reasons. And you can post pictures in there, you can do whatever you want, and then save the notes. Okay. Next. Oh, not a big thing, but you can extract your notes. Let's say you want to extract all your notes for some audit reasons or whatever. You can now do it as a PDF in bulk with extract records notes. Okay, let me just take a little sip here. Okay, next, I opened up a window. Payments. Let's say you want to add fees, annual fees on January 1, but there are no payments on January 1. So with the post payment tool, you'd be able to import a line called annual fees, but they're column fees. But what I want to be careful so that my users do not by accident put in a payment amount. So the fees are $25 or $250. They would put it in the payment column. We don't want that. We want them to put them in the annual fees column. So you can specify that payment must be zero. Before, what we used to say is annual fees PMT equals zero, so that the user does not mess up. But now we can force the payment to be zero. This is in Tools, Setting, Payment Line Statuses. Again, to reduce possibilities of error. If you are dealing with the 30, 60, 90 days late, the outstanding amounts, we have, and I think some of you will really appreciate this one. And the best way, you can have an expected payment of zero. For example, I create a line status called extra due payment, and as well as a paid new extra payment. So this is when it's due, this is when it's paid. So this is an unexpected payment. So my expected amount should be zero, but maybe by error an amount was put in there. So what you can tell the system is, hey, my expected payment must be zero. So no matter what, when I have this line status or this line, my expected will be zero, thus reducing my outstanding amount. For example, your client calls you up, he says, listen, I'll pay you $100, €100, £100, and this was on March 15th. So it's an unexpected payment. So with this, the due payment will be zero. So when the person actually pays, it'll reduce the outstanding amount by 100. So there's no chance of error anymore. We now have email sent via what we call OAuth 2.0 actually. Eventually, the SMTP email protocol will be taken off, will be obsolete for Google, for Gmail. So we want to prevent this from you not being able to send them. So we now have a Gmail with OAuth 2.0 security protocol. Eventually, we'll probably add some other providers, but right now, Gmail being the largest provider, we wanted to do this one right now, as opposed to SMTP. So if you're using Google for sending out emails, if that's your provider, maybe eventually just go with the Google API with OAuth. It's not very complicated. This is a feature that some of our users have emailed us about. Global changes to borrower, you can now import via an Excel sheet. In 5.1 and previous versions, you were able to import loan information or record information via Excel, but you couldn't do this for borrowers. So now I could go in and say, okay, I want to have the borrower's fiscal year end or whatever, the borrower's income. So I could import all that information in bulk using simply the loan, so not the loan ID, but the borrower ID, column 1 or column A, and the amount in column B of my Excel file. Boom, they all come in at once. So a lot quicker to import new data. Next, this is pretty much a behind the scenes thing, but again, it's to simplify your lives. We've reconfigured this on the back end. These are for what we call the column fees. You'll notice we now have a save as default. So let's say Joe always charges $1 per month for service fees. So every payment has a $1 service charge. So he would say save as default, and this would be for all his loans. But Mary, she doesn't charge these fees. So she's another user of Margill. If she wants to add the $1, she would have to do the same thing with her save as default. The save as default is always user-based. It is not system-based. So that's quite important to note. And we did some other improvements in that, so it's a lot easier to use now. Well, you may not notice, but it's easier. New user management options. For security reasons, we now have what we call a strong password. So the admin, only the admin, ADMIN user, this is the super admin. This person can have all your clients, all your users require a strong password. So, and it tells you what is a strong versus a weak password. Your user can say that somebody cannot create a new record. So this person not allowed creating a new record. Okay, great. And this we'll cover a little later on, but again, for security reasons, we now have logs and sensitive information where users cannot copy data in bulk. They can still produce reports, but if they have a report, there'll be a log of their activity. And this is actually in the upcoming version 5.2.x. So So it's not really in here right now. It's on the version available right now. We'll cover this a bit later on. Mathematical equations. You can create equations, this plus this multiplied by that, this minus that, or whatever. Quite fun to use. You can now, it looks silly, but you can multiply by a -1. So if I want my fees to be reflected as negatives, I could say admin fees multiplied by -1 will give me, instead of being $25, it'll be -25. And this can be quite useful in your statements or invoices, even in your reports. Custom fields. You can now, custom fields with imports with the scroll menus. So don't forget, you can create custom fields along with menu text or scroll menus. If you have a whole bunch of them, previously you'd have to go in and put each of your choices individually. Now you can import them via an Excel sheet. I think it's a 1-column Excel sheet. Boom, they all come in. We still recommend to have your default as blank, so that by default nothing goes in. I'd rather have no data than false data. Okay, and you can read the little question mark here to get more information on that. Something quite nice is if you have a scroll menu with 25 or 30 or whatever, and you want to update this with an alphabetical order. Let's say you guys sell cars, you want to know the model, and the models evolve over time, and you want to follow the alphabetical. So all you would have to do is update your Excel, and that's it. So then the new model would come in alphabetically based on your Excel sheet, and you keep this Excel sheet up to date, and once in a while update it to Margill. And don't worry, it will not mess up anything that's existing. The previous data in there, it'll stay the same. Don't have to worry about that. And it's available for all pull-down menus in the system, or pretty much all of them. Small little detail, if you're using the alerts, and you should use alerts, they're very useful. For example, fiscal year end, or call the client for his insurance, call the client because it's his birthday. You can now open up a record, right click, open up the record and see what's happening in there. We did also various corrections in 5.1 and 5.2, so we're nearing the end of what's in the current version. We did many minor fixes in the statement. There were some irritants in there that were fixed. If you're in Europe, in the document merge, the Euro format kind of overlapped on the numbers because the Euro is a wider character than most. And if you do find some irritants, please let us know. We'll fix them. It may not be in the short term, but you guys have to help us out also. You find this is really annoying, let us know. We will help you out, of course, and we'll try fixing it. What's coming up in other versions of 5.2 or maybe 5.3, and most of these are already complete. We're just at the testing stages right now. So, and we'll go over it. We have slides for each one. So you can now have, this is a really interesting one. If you're using automatic fees, for example, I tell if unpaid, charge $25. Right now, all your loans would have the same $25 or 25 pounds. If you wanted to differentiate, you could say mortgages, NSF fees are $30, but personal loans are only $20. So you'd be able to specify by record type. So these records are 20, these are 30, these are 10, based on record type. Or again, a bit more flexibility, one custom field. Their custom field could be called fee type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you'd be able to specify based on this special a custom field that has a scroll menu. So I think some of you will really appreciate this. A lot more flexibility. You can now import those column fees 1, 2, 3, 4 via the post payment tool. You couldn't in the old version. You'll know if this applies to you. This is a bit like what we're mentioning about Salesforce, where you're able to now, through an API, we call it an API, you'd be able to import or update any kind of data based on the borrower. So the borrower's email changes, the borrower's address changes, or whatever. You'd be able to, through your system, generate a JSON file, JSON, which is a common standard format, or with Salesforce, you will be able to automatically update all this information or create a new borrower. If we don't see a unique identifier for this borrower, then this will create a new borrower in Margill based on your other system data. So you only update your third-party system, and every 10 minutes or so, or 5 minutes, it's up to you, this Margill would automatically be updated. It has to be a JSON or Salesforce. You might need our help for that. You can also encrypt the data. That's a little more complex, of course. For more advanced users who know what behavior is all about, behavior is if I have a payment that's called interest only, and this must always be interest only no matter what happens above. I lend out more money, the payments, the upcoming payments will automatically be updated to refund the interest only. In previous versions, you had to go in the results table and add this behavior. So now if you activate this feature, you'd be able to say, okay, I want interest only payments and I want this behavior to be automatically included in all my payments. So you save one step, and it's a little more advanced feature. And most of the time, by the way, the behavior is not activated. So you don't even know what behavior is all about. It's really for those who know, who have special needs for interest only or for fixed principal payment types. 3 new user log types are now included. Loan events have always been in there, but now you can actually these are actually now, it can now be saved as a text file and imported by your third-party audit systems. This is more for really guys who are quite stringent on security. There's a log of reports, so who creates what report. The data is not in this log, of course, but it says who created what for how many loans, for example. The user management, the sessions, so who came in, who came out of the system, how long they were on the system. Maybe they were in the system at night when they weren't allowed really. So why were they there at night? And as well as a log of overnight tasks. This has always existed, but it can now be in a log folder, for example. So this is really for audit purposes, really, more advanced users. Coming soon, I don't have slides for this very quickly. You will be able to say, I don't want compulsory fields when a record is in draft mode. It's quite annoying. You create a new record, it's in draft mode, and you don't have a specific information. So you're not able to save it if it's active. Whereas if it's a draft record, then you're all set. Even if it's compulsory, you wouldn't have to have it if you activate this feature. This is a tough one. End of day transactions. And we have many clients who are going to love when this occurs. We tried putting in already. We spent quite a bit of time, but it's quite complex to implement. So it's a work in progress. For example, my payment comes in on December 31st, but I want to apply it as if it was at the end of day at midnight, as opposed to January 1 at 0 o'clock, because I want to have the accrued interest. So right now, if you put in December 31st, we suppose it's paid in the morning, which means there's interest accrued in for that day of December 31st. Some of you know what December 31st means, how much money is lost because of that day, which is excluded. So what you'd be able to say, and if you put it on December 31st, it would be in your fiscal year, in your current fiscal year, but it wouldn't reflect what you want it to be. You want it to be at midnight, but you're not able to do it. So you put in January 1, which is then in the wrong fiscal year. We have some workarounds in the older versions, but when this is implemented, it'll be quite interesting. So the payment will be December 31st at midnight minus 1 second, as if it was January 1 at 0 o'clock. A little more sophisticated. As always, your suggestions are always welcome. How are we doing for time? That's not bad. We're all right. At this stage, we're going to look at the older versions, but stuff which people forget. So when I give training, I see people are not using these features, so it's really important. So this is like a mini load training session here. So in the main window, you can personalize what you see. So every user can say, I'm interested in seeing the borrower first name, last name, but I don't care about the fiscal year end or whatever. So you can hide these columns in the main window. And you can change the name of these columns. So if we call them borrower first name, you can call it client or whatever, or patient. So you can name it whatever you want in your main window. and every user customizes this main window to his or her needs. In the results table per se, so that's the payment schedule, there are like I think 45 or 60 columns, I forget. There are so many columns in there. You can hide those columns which you don't need, and you can change the order. So you use this button in the payment schedule to show, hide all these things, and you save as default. So next time around, they should stay. They should always stay. There's also the big T, small t. If you're getting older like I am, you have to grow your payment schedule, make it a bigger T here. So it'll be less stringent on your eyes. When you open up a loan per se, you're in the main window, you double click on a loan, on a record. On top, you see some record identifiers, the unique ID or the loan number, the first name, last name, company name, whatever. You can show whatever you want in there. You could say, I don't care about the Margill number. I want to see my own number, my unique identifier or my file number. So you personalize this to your own needs. And that's based on every user can set their own record identifiers. We mentioned this. I hope you're using the post payment tool. I have clients who have been clients for 5 years and they're still posting payments one by one. They open up a loan, they say it's paid, they close up the loan and save it. That's ridiculous. There is a post payment tool to quickly update payments. You have 1,000 payments, boom, they're all done. Paid, unpaid, late, partial, fees are charged. So use this. Most people are using it, but some people are still not using it. Global changes or mass changes to records and borrowers. You want to add a new field in the database, or you want to change some stuff in bulk, or you forgot to enter the person's birthday. So you'd be able to change these in bulk, right mouse click, and it's called global changes. The queries for reports. This has been available since version 5.0, I believe. Before that, you would have to go in the main window when you want to produce a report. You go in the main window, you sort, you only select the records you want, and you produce a report with that. So if you have 10,000 loans, 20,000 loans, it becomes a real pain. We now have queries where you create your own. I want active records. I only want active records with this creditor or this loan type. So you'd be able to create as many queries as you want with a whole bunch of possibilities. I could say I only want records that were originated after 2016. I don't care about anything older than that, although they should probably be closed. More, Okay, in the US, you can do ACH payments with Agave. They used to be called Intrix. This is quite useful. So ACH payments, there are charges for that. In Canada, it's with Perceptec. Many users of Perceptec. With Perceptec, it's a little more evolved than Agave. You have a rejected transaction report. So you'd be able to see, okay, I have this many rejects this month, and you can automatically change it from, the system will do it from a paid, we suppose it was paid, it becomes unpaid. Fees are charged automatically, and an email goes out, Dear Joe, your payment bounced, please call me ASAP with this, all in one operation. We mentioned the overnight tasks. If it takes a while to open up your system in the morning, use the overnight tasks. This calculates the payment. This calculates, the interest accrued. It recalculates everything. So it does a bunch of things at night at 1 o'clock in the morning, for example. It can do the backups, and you can send out the automatic emails. So overnight tasks are very, very important, especially if you have any kind of volume. Document merge, use docx. If you had old documents using RTF, try changing them to docx. You'll see in some cases, it's better to keep RTF. If it worked well, keep it that way. But usually docx is a little better, and our text editor is better in docx than it is in RTF. You can block users from changing historical transactions. For example, the administrator could say, I do not allow my users to change any data which is older than 10 days. So all the lines will become grayed out, so they won't be able to change anything, but users can they can have the right to change older transactions if you give them a specific right. So you don't want somebody to go back 5 months back in time, change something, and it affects the whole schedule for the next 5 months. That would be ridiculous. Okay. You can set compulsory fields. We mentioned this already. We have to enter this. You cannot save otherwise. It's very annoying. But again, if you need the field, you cannot save until this field has been set. And what's upcoming is, if it's a draft, this would not be a compulsory field. The only thing is with a borrower, there's no such thing as a draft borrower. So I'm not sure how that would work. You have no choice anyways for a borrower. You need all the information. Anything else? Automatic emails to borrowers. For example, X days before, you could say, Dear John, a payment is coming up on March 15th. Don't forget to make sure you have the amount in your bank account, especially if you're using ACH payments. Or don't forget to send us the check. Or again, if a payment bounces, dear Julie, women don't bounce check as often as men. No, never mind that. Dear Julie, your payment from June 1st bounced. Please call me ASAP so we can take an arrangement. These can all go out automatically by email. What else do we have here? Don't forget, there's a web portal for your borrowers and creditors. So for example, I could say, here's your balance today. For your borrowers, they log in, username and password. Margill pulls the information from your database one way only, and it gives you the information that you want to show to your borrowers or to your creditors if it's a multi-creditor database. Margill is now available as a service. It's on Microsoft Azure, a very secure platform. We do the software updates. We do the backups. It's a high security environment, of course. And you can be wherever you want to be in Mexico, and no matter where you're on a holiday, you want to check your Margill, you go in margill.net, you'd remote connection into it. If you're having difficulties right now with VPNs, virtual private, VPNs, they are so slow. They're based on so many bottlenecks. You could temporarily say, let's go on Microsoft Azure for the next 6 months because of COVID. It's possibly something we can offer you guys. There's a cost, of course, on a monthly basis. But if it's useful, then hey, go for it. Training is key. I see many people who have never taken training. They say, well, let's take an hour or two together. We go over the database. We show you how to optimize everything. We offer training remotely, on-site also, but now not these days. Eventually, we'll get out of this COVID thing. So training is so important. It's not very expensive and it's worth a fortune. So I really encourage you to do training. You'll see you'll gain quite a bit from that. We're almost at the end. We're okay for time. Yes, so 45 minutes. Last slide. What's new? Don't forget to go check out the release notes. You can update at margill.com/getget. You have questions, give us a call. You'll have to leave a message. We're all working remotely right now. Or you can send to support@margill.com. That's the most efficient way of doing it. If you have interesting questions, we can provide the answers. Well, we'll provide the answers nonetheless. But if they're really interesting, you can post these and answer them in our knowledge base. Of course, it's all anonymous. So that covers it. So if you have any questions, feel free to call. I encourage you to email us. Training is important, and update to version 5.2. And essentially, that's it. I wish to thank you for your participation. This was Mark Margill, I'm the CEO of the company. And thanks again for attending. And please let us know if you have any questions. Thank you. Signing off. Bye-bye.